The 87 days in the Arctic that shocked America. In the summer of 1913, a wooden ship sailed north into waters that maps barely understood. It was called the Karluk, and most of the men aboard would never return home. But one young crew member would survive 87 days on drifting Arctic ice, and his story would quietly become one of the most astonishing survival chapters in North American history. The Dream of the North. The expedition was led by Canadian explorer Vilhjalmur Stefansson. His goal was bold: explore and claim unknown Arctic territory north of Alaska and Canada. At that time, the Arctic was still mysterious. The North Pole had only recently been claimed by Robert Peary in 1909, though debate surrounded it. America and Canada were fascinated by polar exploration. Newspapers followed Arctic voyages like modern audiences follow space missions. The Karluk carried scientists, hunters, sailors, and supplies for years of research. Among them was 23-year-old fireman William McKinlay, not a famous explorer, not a leader, just a regular crewman working below deck in the engine room. He had no idea he was sailing into disaster. The ice closes in. By August 1913, thick sea ice trapped the Karluk off the northern coast of Alaska. The Arctic Ocean is deceptive in summer. Calm waters can freeze rapidly when wind shifts. Ice floes tightened around the wooden hull. The ship groaned, then drifted. For months, the Karluk was carried helplessly westward by the moving pack ice, like a toy in a frozen river. Supplies were rationed. Morale dropped. Then, in September, Stefansson left the ship on a hunting trip, promising to return. He never made it back. The ship drifted farther into the Arctic without its leader. Some later accused Stefansson of abandoning the crew. Others argued it was tragic timing. History still debates it. The crushing. On January 10, 1914, the ice won. Pressure ridges built around the hull like frozen mountains. Timbers cracked. Water rushed in. Within hours, the Karluk sank beneath the ice. The crew scrambled to save what they could: food, sleds, rifles, tents. They set up camp directly on the frozen ocean. Imagine standing on ice hundreds of miles from land. No trees, no mountains, just white horizon in every direction. And beneath your feet, deep black Arctic water. Camp on a moving ocean. The men built what they called shipwreck camp, but the ice was not stable. It drifted constantly. Temperatures dropped below -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind sliced through fur clothing. Hunting seals and polar bears became their only food source. One wrong step through thin ice meant instant death. Billy McKinlay later wrote that the silence was the worst part. No birds, no trees, only wind and our breathing. Food ran dangerously low. Some crew members argued, some broke mentally. One man walked away from camp during a storm and was never seen again. The march to Wrangel Island. Captain Robert Bartlett, the ship's commander, made a decision. The drifting ice might eventually carry them toward land called Wrangel Island, far off the Siberian coast. It was their only hope. After weeks of drifting, they sighted distant land, but reaching it required dragging sleds over miles of broken, shifting ice. Men pulled heavy loads through jagged ridges. Ice cracked underfoot. Water surged through open leads. Several nearly drowned. One sled broke through completely and had to be abandoned. After brutal days of hauling supplies, 14 survivors reached Wrangel Island in March 1914. It was barren, frozen, isolated, but it was solid ground. Stranded on the edge of the world. They built crude shelters from driftwood and canvas, hunted seals when possible, ate polar bear meat. But rescue seemed impossible. Wrangel Island lay hundreds of miles from any settlement. Captain Bartlett volunteered to attempt the impossible, travel by sled and small boat across the frozen Chukchi Sea to Siberia, then somehow reach Alaska to organize rescue. He left with one Inuit hunter. The rest stayed behind. Billy watched his captain disappear over the ice horizon. He later said that was the moment fear truly arrived, because now, if rescue failed, they would slowly starve. Months of waiting. Spring brought slightly warmer temperatures, but also unstable ice and flooding snow. Rations dwindled. Hunting became unpredictable. 2 men fell ill. 1 died. Another accidentally shot himself while cleaning a rifle. The group shrank. Billy began carving tally marks into driftwood to track days. He forced himself to follow routine, check traps, melt snow, repair clothing, scan the horizon. Hope became fragile, but they held on. The rescue. Captain Bartlett's journey became legendary in its own right. After months of travel across Siberia and Alaska, he finally reached authorities. A rescue ship, the King and Winge, was dispatched in September 1914, nearly a full year after the Karluk had been trapped. When the rescue ship finally appeared offshore, survivors could barely believe it. They had endured 8 months in Arctic isolation, -40 degrees temperatures, starvation, ice drift, death of 11 crew members. Billy McKinlay weighed barely over 100 pounds, but he was alive. America reacts. News of the Karluk disaster spread quickly across North America. Newspapers compared it to earlier Arctic tragedies. Questions were raised about leadership, preparation, and responsibility. Captain Bartlett was praised as a hero. Stefansson faced criticism for leaving the ship before it sank. Official investigations followed. The story became part of Arctic exploration history, a lesson in both courage and controversy. The quiet survivor. Billy McKinlay returned home to Scotland, but later moved to North America. He rarely spoke publicly about the ordeal. Decades later, he wrote a memoir describing the Arctic as both beautiful and merciless. He described nights under shimmering northern lights where he felt both terror and awe. He admitted there were days he expected to die. But like many survivors of extreme conditions, he said survival came down to one decision: do the next task, then the next. Why this story still matters. The Karluk disaster changed Arctic exploration planning, better ice navigation strategy, improved emergency supply distribution, stronger communication protocols, more respect for Inuit survival knowledge. It also showed something deeply human. The Arctic did not defeat them all. Leadership, endurance, skill, and stubborn willpower brought some home. The final image. Imagine standing on drifting ice. No cities, no engines, no rescue signal guaranteed, just wind, and the decision to survive one more day. Billy McKinlay was not the expedition leader, not the captain, not famous, but he endured 87 days on moving Arctic ice and lived to tell the story. And sometimes history is not written by the boldest voice. Sometimes it is written by the one who simply refuses to fall.